प्रपन्न पारिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। The 27th verse said, Yoginam uttamam sukham upaiti. The best happiness, the greatest happiness, the happiness that deserves to be sought after more than anything else, comes to the yogi. Prashanta manasam hyenam yoginam. To that yogi whose mind is made calm. In the previous verse it was said, the practice on which Adi Shankaracharya had commented, Yoga Abhyasa Balat. Because of the strength, the force set up by regular practice. Yoga here can mean Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. Yoga is the spiritual practices. Don't take Yoga Abhyasa Balat as referring to Patanjali Yoga. It is rather what Aurobindo would call integrated yoga. You know your personalities and do everything that is appropriate to bring your own personality under your own control. Upaiti Shantarajasam. Who is someone whose rajas has come down. Because when there is rajas, there is moha. And Adi Shankara said, Prakshina mohadi klesha rajasam. And Brahma Bhutam, yogi was described as having become Brahma. Actually, the yogi realizes everything is Brahma. He doesn't have or she doesn't have a separate existence. Shankaracharya wrote, Akalmasham just does not mean free of negative stuff. This yogi is free of both negative and positive. Dharma adharmadi varjitam. We take 28th now. Yunjannevam sadatmanam yogi vigata kalmashaha sukhena brahma samsparsham atyantam sukhamashnute. The previous verse said sukham uttamam, and now we have atyantam sukham. Anta means limit. Atyanta, crossing all limits. That is limitless, boundless. So all these shlokas urge us to be regular, to practice whatever we appreciate in a sincere manner. Sukhena, then what was difficult before becomes easy. Sukhena, Brahma samsparsham. In a figurative way, it is said one comes in touch with Brahma. It is figurative. Literally, that cannot be so. Literally, one is Brahma, and as a previous verse had said, it's all about letting go of false association. Bhashyakara says, Yunjan evam yatoktena kramena. Evam means in this manner. In this chapter itself, so many tips have been given. Other places also, in the previous chapters and in the chapters to come, Sri Krishna drops hints at many places how we may withdraw our mind and senses from the ever-perishing, fleeting pleasures of the world and fix them, mind and senses, in Brahma. Yunjan evam yathoktena kramena yogi yoga antaraya varjitaha. Without any more obstacles lying on his path. And the shloka says Sada, Bhashyakara gives a synonym, Sarvada. Vigata kalmashaha, Vigata papaha. Sinful tendencies don't leave us so easily, but one must not lose hope. We can change. Whenever a thought arises, we will never change. We are like this forever. We must know that that is a false propaganda of the deluded mind. We can change. And sukhena anayasena brahma samsparsham brahmana samsparsham. Is it apara brahma, the lower one? No. Brahmana parena samsparshaha yasya tad brahma samsparsham sukham. The whole word brahma samsparsham is adjective to sukha. That happiness which is marked by being one with Brahma. Atyantam antam atitya vartate iti atyantam. Going beyond anta. Antam atitya. Utkrishtam niratishayam ashnute vyapnoti. Ashnute is obtains, attains, reaches, makes such happiness his own. Otherwise, we hear about some yogi meditated, some Maharshi, some Paramahamsa, some great spiritual giant achieved this in such and such manner. But Ashnute, we ourselves can come upon this unalloyed happiness. Idanim yogasya yat phalam brahmaikatva darshanam sarva samsara vicheda karanam tat pradarsyate. So we not only talk about experiencing happiness, but as Shankara connects us to the next shloka, Sarva Sansara Vicheda Karanam. There is that yoga, that attainment where Vicheda. Now divorce is also called in Sanskrit Vivaha Vicheda. So here also it is Sansara Vicheda. The marriages in the world are not bad really from a spiritual point of view. At the core of all so-called bad situations, bad scenarios and unhappy settings, spiritually speaking, at the core of it all is our own spiritual ignorance, our own selfishness, our being attached to the body. We may find fault with somebody and say, as long as I am with her, I cannot have happiness. Actually, it is superficially true. Given the swabhava of a person, he will never be able to adjust with her. But spiritually speaking, the point we are making is this swabhava can be uprooted. One can radically change. If one radically changes, the very other person with whom any possible loving relationship was ruled out changes in one's perception. One finds someone with whom one could not adjust before, not only adjustable, but most lovable too. But that is generally regarded so difficult. So we talk about ground realities, practical aspects, and so on. Spirituality is not impractical, but going by that definition of practical, we should say spirituality shows some possibility above what is regarded as practical ordinarily. Spirituality does miracles. Spirituality does extraordinary things. The lame can walk, the blind can see, the deaf can hear, the dumb can talk. All that is possible in spirituality. When some of us spend some time in a Christian seminary or training center in Bengaluru, on the last day, the director of that center, a Christian priest, even presided over our function. And during the function or a little later, he asked me, he said about Christianity, he said, ours is a religion that is so much centered in miracles. Jesus Christ performed miracles. And when we pray, when we do all the sadhana here, we are all the time hoping for miracles. Are there miracles talked about in Hinduism? Does Hinduism lay emphasis on miracles? At the spur of the moment, I said, we don't give so much importance to miracles. Actually, miracles are acknowledged, but they are supposed to happen by certain siddhis, and those siddhis are not given undue importance. Let me anyhow get back to you. Since that day, I have been thinking, and now I am convinced that Hinduism all the time talks about miracles, but the miracle that Hinduism and Vedanta especially talks about is of such subtle and high order. It's not about the lame good beginning to walk or the blind beginning to see. They are very much included, they are talked about, but the Vedanta puts all of them in a second class category. And thereby, anyone may misunderstand that the Vedanta does not talk about miracles, it talks about some philosophical thing, some intellectual stuff, and so on. No, neither philosophical nor intellectual stuff, but a miracle of the highest order. If you who have been thinking you are a body, you are the body for ages, for lives, get the insight, you are not the body. That is the miracle of all miracles. The dumb who begins to speak then suffers in some newer ways. The blind who is able to see now suffers in life for many other factors. Therefore, a number of so-called miracles, the poor man becoming a billionaire, may have more agitations after a little while than when he was a poor person begging on the roadside. But the highest miracle is when one gets freed from the idea, I am this body, I am this personality, and so on. All right. Brahmaikatva darshanam sarva sansara vichcheda karanam. Therefore, Hinduism does talk about miracles. In fact, when people go to temples, no Hindu says to God, please give me God realization or Atma Sakshatkara, Brahma Sakshatkara. Every Hindu, 99.999% of Hindus pray for miracles which are similar to what is highlighted in Christianity. People ask for good health or somebody who hasn't got a job. God, bless my son with a job. Bless my daughter with a good companion. Bless this person, that person, or God bless me with such and such. Many times it is material benefits, and there is nothing wrong with that. Therefore, certain importance is given to countless material benefits, health benefits, and such things of the temporal world. So certain importance is given in Hinduism too. But we, in our Vedanta classes, put it a little to the side. That is why majority of Hindus don't come anywhere near Vedanta. So I must tell Father John Pradeep next time I meet him, you asked me a question whether Hinduism gives importance to miracles. That day I did not answer very clearly because I was so much in the Vedanta mood. We were studying Brahma Sutra with Shankara Bhāshya at that place. And Brahma Sutra does not mention, at least in the portion that we were studying. Otherwise, Brahma Sutras cover all sorts of things in the 555 sutras. I'm sure there are some sutras which talk about siddhis and so on, that is miraculous powers. But the first four sutras, Chatussutri, we studied with the Shankara Bhāshya, is highly focused on setting right our primary fundamental vision. We mistake our nature to be this body, that is the error, that is the asamyak darshana, to see ourselves of the body, whereas we are actually the pure awareness. He is like seeing a snake over there, where actually there is a rope. So how can we see the rope and let go of the false perception of the snake? How can we see our birthless, deathless, ever blissful, pure self and let go of the last traces of any idea that we are the body and now we may die or we are getting older, oh my, may not get tomorrow's food, such things. That is totally put to the back seat in the high Vedanta. So it so happened especially in that particular camp, a bunch of us, some 25 of us, were applying our minds to this highest miracle, which is not about those temporal benefits. So I'll tell John Pradeep, the priest, that we very much have all those things. But Vedanta takes us to a higher level. All this came because I started explaining Shankara's word, Sansara Vichcheda Karanam. Shankaracharya says that vision of seeing Brahma everywhere cuts off our bondage. We are bound to this sansara, this transmigration, birth, death, again death, or between one pair of birth and death, going through so many sorrows of financial loss, or old age, or disease, or death of near and dear ones, or insult, being ignored, neglected, not paid enough attention, and hundreds of things. That is sansara. Sansara vichcheda karanam pradarsyate. So this is a kind of palashruti. Shankara says, right? Yogasya yat phalam brahmaikatva darshanam tat pradarsyate. Phalam, the reward of this highest yoga. Then that phalam itself is called sansara vichcheda karanam. Let's see the shloka 29 then. Sarva bhutasthamaatmanam sarva bhutani cha atmani ikshate yoga yuktatma sarvatra samadarshana. This yogi This person who has now attained Samyak Darshana, right seeing, Ikshate. Ikshate is the verb of the shloka. He beholds, he sees what? He sees himself as present in all living beings. Atmanam Ikshate. Sometimes going systematically about understanding the original shloka requires catching hold of the verb, catching hold of the subject. Here the implied subject is yogi. Yogi ikshate. Yogi beholds. Then catching hold of, if the verb is transitive, the object. Here it is transitive. The yogi sees, and we may ask the question, what does he see? Then we say, Atmanam Ikshate. This is how we find the meaning of the whole shloka, beginning with the primary building blocks of the sentence, Yogi Atmanam Ikshate. Then Kidrisham Atmanam. What kind of so-called pure self does he see? Sarva Bhutastam. He sees the self. If the reference were to the ego, the limited self with which we are identified at this time, Sarvabhutastam cannot be said about it. Therefore, the unique or extraordinary nature of the pure self which the yogi beholds is that the pure self is in all living beings. Sarvabhuteshu tishtati iti sarvabhutastaha tamatmanam. And there is a second object for ikshate. The yogi sees the pure self as present in all living beings. Yogi sees all living beings. So all living beings are the second object. Somebody drinks milk and he eats biscuits. So milk is one object for the verb drinks, and the same person is engaged in eating biscuits. Biscuits is the object for the verb eats. Here for the same word ikshate, Atmanam is one object, karma pada. Sarva bhutani is the second object, that is one more karma pada. Atmanam ikshate sarva bhutastam. Sarva bhutani ikshate atmani means atmastam. This is the echo of the 6th and 7th mantras of Ishavasya Upanishad. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyevanupashyati. And yasmin sarvani bhutani atmaivabhut vijanatah. There are two mantras. One of them says, he who sees, he or she who sees all living beings in oneself and oneself in all living beings. He is not afraid, he is no more affected by some regrets, etc. Another also puts it the same way. The language is slightly different. One who becomes the self of all. Yasmin sarvani bhutani atmaiva bhut vijanatah tatra ko moha kashokaha ekatvam anupashyatah. Though M.K. Gandhi was not so much into Vedanta, he was more focused on social service, being a good person, and so on. No wonder he is talked of Ishavasya Upanishad as the most precious scripture of Sanatana Dharma. You may have heard Gandhiji's quotation. If all scriptures are burned to ash, but Ishavasya Upanishad remains, then Sanatana Dharma, Hinduism can be revived with that and so on. Because though it is of short size, just 18 mantras, it has such insights. Seeing oneself in all, seeing all in oneself. Tato na vijugupsate. One then is no more affected by insecurity. Jugupsa there is insecurity. Gopayitum ichchati is, jugupsa. I want to protect my gold. I want to protect my family. I want to protect my house. And on a deeper level, I want to, above all, protect my image. I want to protect my image. That is jugupsa. Tato na vijugupsate. One does not care for one's image also. Let people think I am mad. I don't care. Ashtavakra did not suffer from any complex as he entered Janaka's court. Well, I wish at least today I had a proper body. He did not. He did not care. I am coming to such a great king's court. Other places I don't mind. If you and I were to go some special place, we are extra conscious about whether we wore the right dress, whether we cropped our hair, whether we put some ornaments, whether the way we walk is all right, whether we talk is all right. Is it befitting at such a place? This is not our home. This is a very reputed. Most of us are very concerned about our looks and our behavior. If one of you were to get Padma Shri, let us say, from the President of India, you would be to an extent concerned about whether you presented yourself properly as you go and receive that Padma Shri from the President of India. So that is a jugupsa. Na jugupsate, na vijugupsate. It doesn't mean irresponsibility. Many enlightened people may wear perfect dress. They may present themselves in the most appropriate way. But no more out of any fear, no more out of certain insecurity, no more out of desire to impress people. They would do so as something appropriate. If they find, even as they are entering a wonderful, great, reputed halls in some town, if they find that their hair is crumpled, and let us say they carry a little comb in their pocket, they may pause, set their hair right. They may, if possible, but not out of any insecurity. Because they don't have to get anything from anybody. They are not afraid of losing anything. So coming back to this shloka, which I said is an echo of the 6th and 7th mantras of Ishavasya Upanishad. The yogi sees himself in all sarva bhuteshu atmanam pashyati and atmani sarva bhutani pashyati yoga yuktatma. Atma here is antakharana. His antakharana, his mind and intellect are well united with the pure self, therefore have found peace. Sarvatra samadarshana. Sarvatra is one word, samadarshana is another word. Surprisingly, in my book, where there is hardly any error, they have been written together, which is a very slight printing error. I am carrying the book by Swami Satchidanandendra Saraswati, and his books are amazingly accurate. Print, the layout, the translation, the footnotes. One gap would not be at the wrong place, or where there has to be a gap, it would definitely be there. And having mentioned it, even those who are good in language have some difficulty sometimes in reading the books published by him. I believe he himself used to stand and compose the printing, those days, not like modern times where it's all computerized. One had to put the corresponding blocks, the letters. So he ran a press also in his ashram in Holenarsipura, Karnataka. So one difficulty is if there is a word like anga, anga, he would not write in Devanagari or in Kannada with anuswara, the dot above, or in Kannada it's a zero. No anuswara, anga would have a followed by the nasal of kavarga, ka, ka, ga, ga, nya. Because anga, technically speaking, should have not the aha. He would not write Vedanta with an anuswara. They are all oversimplified versions which are acceptable in other languages. But in original Sanskrit, if you are writing Vedanta, Ve, Dirga, of course, Sanskrit has no Dirga or Rasva, Ve, because South Indian languages have two, that's another matter. There are two different letters. In Devanagari, in Marathi, in Gujarati, in Hindi, and all other languages, there is only one A, which is generally pronounced as long one. All right. So Vedanta, SSS, Swami Sachidanandendra Saraswati would, in all his books, would write Ve, Da, and half Na, Ta, Tha, Da, Da, Na, and then Ta. Because the Tha will take the nasal of its class. Ta, Tha, Da, Da, Na. Na is the nasal of that class. Anyway, surprisingly, after Swami Sachidananda Saraswati passed away, many years have passed. Another 2 years, 50 years will have passed. So many new prints have come. So I would not be surprised if this print mistake happened because he has moved on and others were not as careful as he was. Sarvatra Samadarshanaha, my main point is there are two separate words. There should be a space in between Sarvatra and Samadarshana. Let's see how Adi Shankaracharya throws light on this. Sarva Bhutastam Sarveshu Bhuteshu Stitam Swam Atmanam. Atma Shabda is used in the general sense of oneself. Atma Vishwasa, confidence in oneself. Atma Bala, one's own strength, inner strength. Atma Shabda is a reference to oneself. Sarva Bhutani cha Atmani, Brahmadini Stamba Paryantani. Starting from the Chaturmukha Brahma to a stump of a tree or stump of a plant, Atmani Ekatam Gatani Ikshate. One sees they have become one with oneself. Pashyati Yoga Yuktatma Samahita Antakharanaha. Samahita is made calm, quiet. This extraordinary transformation can take place to any of us, but repeatedly it is said in the scriptures, we must do our 2 cents. A dollar has 100 cents, so 2 cents out of 100. We have to do that little part on our side. That's where we fail. We cut down even there. Then we find, I think it's impossible. Some even believe that such radical transformation is not result of any sadhana. It happens when it happens like an accident. It happens that U.G. Krishnamurti maintained the stand that this transformation takes place when there is a certain biological change, like attaining puberty like hair turning gray. Of course, there may be some ways to speed up that, but biological changes, think of it. In some very rare case, an 8-year-old girl will have white hair, gray hair. In very rare cases, an 11-year-old boy already has wrinkles on the forehead. But they are also biological changes. There the biology is operating on an unusual time scale. But transformation is said to be result of certain sadhana. And U.G. Krishnamurti mocked at all that. He criticized J. Krishnamurti also, whose lectures U.G. Krishnamurti heard for quite some time in India and in Europe. U.G. Krishnamurti used to be in the audience of J. Krishnamurti. And later on, apparently, U.G. Krishnamurti underwent certain unexpected processes in himself. He underwent some very painful experiences, and probably he would be in some other state of consciousness for a length of time, etc. There are accounts of them. I have forgotten what I had read, but essentially, it was not just study and contemplation. Certain processes happened in his brain. It seems that his brain cells went through some change. Incidentally, J. Krishnamurti also talked about mutation of brain cells. Neurologists and brain scientists may have serious objections to whatever he claimed. But he did claim in his speeches, in his writings, J. Krishnamurti talked about mutation of the brain cells. He claimed that he was aware of them. He could know that the brain at the cellular level, at the level of brain cells, things were changing. In that sense, J. Krishnamurti also acknowledged the biological aspect of what we are talking of, radical change. And U.G. Krishnamurti went a step further, said that alone is what works. And he mocked at J. Krishnamurti's saying, observe, watch, see the self in operation. He made fun of those things. You are observing, you are watching, you are seeing how the thought functions will not take you anywhere. Unless certain biological changes happen, and they happen at their own sweet time. That was his view. Whatever it is, samahita antakharana. You and I should have the faith that if we do our 2 cents, 98 cents to make the whole dollar will happen by divine grace. Sri Ramakrishna said, put your 1 step towards God. God will put 10 steps towards you. The 1 step that you have to put forward is something where you cannot have compromise. Anyway, samahitantakarana, the mind becoming totally quiet forever, never to return to its agitation, is the extraordinary transformation we are talking about. And that is when sarvatra samadarshanaha. Oh, here also there is no gap. So I have second thought now. Sarvatra samadarshanaha could be a word with no gap. It is made into a compound then. Why not? Yeah. Sarvatra space samadarshana also is grammatically correct. But it appears Swami Satchidanandendra Saraswati deliberately has taken the version Sarvatra Samadarshanaha with no gap in between. Sarvatra gap, no. That is also tenable, that's also justifiable because it is then a Bahuvrihi Samasa. Samadarshanaha also would be a Bahuvrihi Samasa. Samam Darshanam Yasya Saha Samadarshanaha. That also is Bahuvrihi Samasa. But Sarvatra Samam Darshanam Yasya Saha Sarvatra Samadarshanaha. Shankara Bhāshya says, Sarveshu Brahmadi Stavaranteshu Vishameshu Sarvabhuteshu Samam Nirvishesham Brahma Atma Ekatva Vishayam Darshanam Jnanam Yasya Saha Sarvatra Samadarshana. Yeah. He has completely gone with that version. Sarvatra Samadarshana takes Sarvatra also as part of the compound. When something is a part of the compound, then it doesn't stand apart. There is no space between that word and the next word. Therefore, no printing error here. Sarvatra Samadarshanaha, someone who has equal vision everywhere. That everywhere is taken as part of that compound. So the meaning is Sarveshu Brahmadi Stavaranteshu, we explained already. Samam here means Nirvishesham. In order that you may see an elephant and a cow as the same, you have to transcend the physical features of the elephant. You have to transcend the physical features of the cow and many other features. You may have a lot of knowledge of elephants. You may have a lot of knowledge of cows. But in Brahma Drishti, all those features that distinguish an elephant from a cow are put to the back seat, if not dismissed totally. All features have to be put to the back seat. What is this elephant? It is Satchit Ananda. What is this cow? It is Satchit Ananda. That's the significance of Acharya Shankara's word here. Samam, he explains, Nirvishesham. Brahmatmaikatva Vishayam Darshanam Dhanam Yasya Saha Sarvatra Samadarshanaha. And that leads to a very, very amazing, very liberating, totally liberating vision. 30th verse says, before that, Adi Shankara says, Etasya Atmaikatva Darshanasya Phalam Uchyate. The reward of such a vision of the self being absolutely one in all. There is only one self. The pure self is just one. And even those people who say, but we are ignorant, we have not realized. The same pure self is shining. Etasya Atma Ekatva Darshanasya. So the shloka goes, Yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvancha mai pashyati tasyaham na pranashyami sachame na pranashyati. Whoever sees me everywhere and whoever sees everything in me, he will never be away from me. I will never be away from her or him. Tasya aham na pranashyami. Literally, I never get lost with regard to him. Sachamena pranashyati, he never gets lost with regard to me. But that's a complicated language. The simplification of this translation would be that devotee, she or he, and I never are separate. We are ever one, ever together, ever with each other. Sarvatra mam pashyati, sarvancha mahi pashyati. So earlier it was sarva bhutani and the self. But here now, God and everything. Seeing God in everything and seeing everything in God. Tasyaham na pranashyami. This is slang language. If A and B are friends for a long time, but out of some misunderstanding, A does not meet B anymore. A keeps away. The slang language has this. Most of you would have used it. A ditched B. Ditching it is called. So in friendships they say, don't ditch me, and so on. So a slang translation for the second line would be, God never will ditch this devotee. The devotee will never ditch God. Tasyaham na pranashyami sachamena pranashyati. One gets united finally with God. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.